In the 20th century, we learned to define ourselves through work. I am a journalist. My dad was a truck driver. My grandfather a miner. I think in the next 100 years, humanity is going to move beyond that. And I think the way to it is that we rapidly automate the world to the potential that we can do. You know, academic research tells us about half of all jobs we could replace by machines or automated information processes. So why don't we do that? Because so many of us, I mean, we're meeting here in Kitzbühel, you know, the capital of skiing. Wouldn't you rather be skiing? And by skiing, you generate some work for other people, human to human work, not the drudgery. So I think people will ask us, this generation, why didn't you see so clearly how easy it would be to move beyond utopias based on work and think about utopias not based merely on leisure, but on culture, cultural production, enjoyment, just having a good life. The climate change issue is one that overlays everything I speak about, and everything, of course, that an industry like the property industry, you know, even say insurance values change in a city like London where I live. Technically, my house is underwater in 20 years' time. So everybody's obsessed with climate change, but my concern is that this blinds us to focusing clearly on the huge mismatch between the technology we have and the society we have. We've got an old social form for a brand new technology, and that technology, you see it in the way buildings are built. It is transforming the way buildings are built. Why isn't it transforming the way the economy is organized? Look, many of us right now experience the most worrying thing in the world as the rise of discontent about democracy or discontent about the multicultural and globalist aspects of the world we live in. I think these are surface phenomena. The deeper phenomena is the discontent with the way the economy works. And you can't solve it by doing more of the same thing. You have to think beyond it. There's a very clear agenda on the right of politics, Donald Trump, to bring jobs from Mexico to America. That I call that de-automation. That's like replacing a robot with a person. I want to replace people with robots. I want to replace jobs with leisure. My dad spent his entire life sitting in a cab of a truck. There are 500,000 men right now in Britain who earn money by driving vehicles. I'd like them to have a better life, and the vehicle can drive itself. Now, real estate all over the world is quite healthy, but let's remember why. Because central banks printed around $20 trillion worth of money and gave it away. Now, this is either a one-off or it's forever. And I think, unfortunately, it's going to have to be forever because the underlying productivity is low. The underlying sources of growth long-term are falling away. We have grown in the last 30 years by expanding the workforce in the world, not by shrinking the workforce and expanding the machinery. This is unusual. We have also grown through poor countries catching up with rich countries, but that too has a finite limit. In the future, even the Bank of England thinks that growth in the next 30 years could be half what it was in the last 30 years. So then the danger is one country starts competing with the other for what growth is left. That's what I think is driving Trump, Salvini, all the nationalists in the world. I would prefer for us to address this problem together. In a way that is rational, but it has to be radical, and that's why I think that I call my book Post-Capitalism. It's scary to some people, but look, to a feudal lord in the Holy Roman Empire in Austria, capitalism was scary. You know, that's why they found, you know, Mozart and his contemporaries and Franz Joseph scary because they had new liberal bourgeois values, and some people didn't like it. But in the end, the bourgeoisie won. And I think in the end, this is not about the proletariat, it's about the networked individual, technologically empowered person saying, I need a better social arrangement than the one that I've got to make this technology work for me. I experience it like this. Everywhere I go, I hear technological euphoria, but geopolitical doom. I meet people in every walk of life who can tell me exactly what's going to happen, the roadmap in their sector to the technology. When do turbojets go without propellers? When do we reach some silicon chips that are 1 atom thin? But the same kind of people believe their own country could end up as a dictatorship, or falling apart in the case of Spain, within 5 years. So this mismatch between euphoria and doom is really weird. And I think I've seen it in other periods of history when, and it's a symptom of the fact that the technology is brilliant, but the social arrangements are terrible. And we need to change the social structure of society in a much more radical way than people are thinking about. One of the reasons that people don't want to think radically about it is because everybody knows the problems of the 20th century and the totalitarian utopias. Yeah, we should be really, really careful we don't repeat that. But if you can imagine a world without carbon, you have to be able to imagine a world without work. I think there's a huge opportunity for democracies, and above all Europe, which is the home of Enlightenment thinking. Everybody's scared of China. Everybody's scared of even India, in 20 years' time, outcompeting us. These societies will not outcompete Europe on democracy, Enlightenment values, and diversity of thought. I'm afraid, I wish they would. When I go to China, that's what I urge them to do. But if you want to be a software engineer or a genetic engineer, you are going to want to work right here in Austria as long as it's a liberal democratic society, because here is where you have the chance to say everything everybody said so far is bullshit. I have the right idea. Like Louis Pasteur said, why do people die? It's not because their organs fail. It's because something called a germ entered their bloodstream. Wow. I fear that some of these authoritarian societies, if the guy who is the chief scientist is also the son of the guy who runs the country, Louis Pasteur gets put in jail. And this is not fantasy. This is possible. We see this already. So I think the big selling point for European democracies is European democracy.